Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. This little platypus here. Save me. Okay, I have 14 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. When confusion is personal. Case file number 2697, written by KHN87. 180 degrees of nope. I was waiting for a tram in a part of the city I'm hugely familiar with. I even used to live a few blocks from there for several years, and very regularly visited during the years since. The tram arrived. I found a seat and pulled out my phone instantly. I wasn't really paying attention to my surroundings for a short while, but everything felt totally normal, until I heard an announcement of the next stop. It was in the exact opposite direction of where I intended to travel. Also, when I looked up, the tram was arriving at that stop in a normal way, nose first. But the time it took to get there was only achievable if it had reversed there, which was not a normal thing and something that I would have definitely noticed if it had happened from the start. Plus, it would also have had to have made a 180-degree turn, which is obviously not doable on the rails. The only other way to get there would be a huge detour taking much longer, which it definitely didn't take. Again, there was no reason for that. At that moment, I was really confused, but all the other passengers seemed just fine. I left the tram, switched to the opposite direction stop, and then the rest of the way was completely normal. There's no chance I mistook the platform at the beginning, as they are quite far from one another. Case file number 2698, written by Alfalfa Choice 8275, Future Funk. I live in a townhouse with neighbors on both sides. I'm very sensitive to fragrances and scents of any kind. Woo, sensory sensitivities. Which means something as regular as a person washing their hair or doing laundry can affect me greatly. Headache, nausea, etc. New people just moved in next door. The other day, I suddenly caught a whiff of strong chemical fumes. My best guess was paint. Makes sense, right? New neighbors, they're probably painting. The smell became overpowering, spreading throughout the house in every room that has a vent. I covered all the vents, put fans in the windows to blow out the smell, and knocked on all the neighbors' doors to ask if they were painting. Nobody answered. All of their windows were closed. Who paints with their windows closed? I knocked again. Nothing. It looked like nobody was home. I continued sealing up any spots where I could detect the smell. After about an hour or two, the smell was no longer detectable. Fast forward a few days, and I'm outside and the neighbors have friends over helping them paint. They weren't painting the other day. The neighbor on the other side didn't smell anything, and wasn't doing anything that could have caused such a strong scent of chemical fumes. Lucky for me, though, I had already covered up all the places where the actual paint smell could have come through, so I didn't have to deal with their paint smell. But where the fuck did the smell come from? It's like I smelled it from the future. It wasn't coming from outside, I checked. My partner could smell it too, but they don't have the sensitivity that I do to things like that. Case file number 2699, written by Icy Crystal, stuck in a smelly loop. Well, I think it just happened to me. I was coming back home from a picnic with my friends. I hadn't slept much the night before and was planning to cancel, honestly, but I always do that, and this time I just wanted to show up. In the end, I did have fun, but the lack of sleep started to hit me hard by around 5 p.m. I took the metro back, and instead of catching an auto home like I usually do, I decided to walk. I thought it might help me beat the sleepiness. The road from the junction has restaurants and grocery stores on both sides, a very familiar path. At one point, I have to take a turn to the right. There's a chicken shop right there, and next to it is this grocery store called Farm Face. So I'm walking, scrolling through cat reels on my phone, when I catch the exact smell of hens. That nasty, specific smell that always comes from that chicken place. I instinctively look up and yep, there it is. The cages of chickens out front, and Farm Face right beside them, glowing with its bright signage. I remember staring at the sign for a second, trying to remember if I had to grab anything for home. I was so tempted to get a coffee, but I knew if I gave in, I'd just stay up even longer. I needed a shower and sleep. That was the plan. So I take the turn. A little ahead is a flower shop. I noticed they were unloading a bunch of plants from a truck. That caught my attention because they don't always do that. I made a quick mental note to remind my dad about getting new plants for the house. The smell in that spot is usually like mud and leaves, earthy and kind of comforting. I kept walking, still on my phone, and then out of nowhere, I get the chicken smell again. The flower shop usually smells like wet, cold mud and green stuff, not hens. So I look up. Farm Face? Again. Chickens, same glowing sign, same smell, same spot. My heart dropped. I had already passed this. I know this stretch of road by heart. I didn't turn back, I didn't loop around. I just kept walking straight, and yet there I was again, at the exact same place. I was panicking inside at this point. My heartbeat was so loud that I could literally hear it in my ears. I was trying to think of a logical explanation, but nothing made sense. To test if I was losing it, I took the same right turn again, and sure enough, the same flower shop was unloading the same plants from the same truck, same moment. I have no idea what happened. Maybe I was just too sleep deprived, but I swear on everything I did not walk back. I didn't turn around. I kept walking straight. I've walked that road 100 times. This has never happened before. Hoping it doesn't happen again. Yeah. Fair enough on that one. I think it's important to never forget that space and time are entwined. So we have space portals, but it's space-time portals. They're always connected. So yeah, a time loop, back to the past. Case file number 2700, written by Nexus of the Universe, Jin, Rummy, and the glitch in the game. Had an experience, not at a casino, but while playing cards at a board game bar. I go every Wednesday with an old coworker of mine, and we'll play a variety of games. Our favorites are Rummy, Jin, King's Corners, and Crazy Eights. But there was one time we played 31. I'm going to forget the actual cards in my hand since it was so long ago, but I will never forget my feeling when it happened. So, in 31, you're dealt 3 cards, and the object is to get closest to or hit 31 with the same suit. Face cards are 10, aces are 11, and everything else is at face value. So, for a perfect hand, you're wanting 2 face cards and 1 ace. But you can also knock when you think your hand is closer to 31 than your opponent's. At that point, everyone else gets 1 more turn, and then there's the reveal. So I barely had anything at this point. It was early on in the game. Let's say I had 7 of clubs, 4 of hearts, and 3 of spades. I swear, I blinked, and when I looked at my cards, I was 1 card away. Let's say ace of hearts, king of hearts, 5 of clubs. And it freaked me the heck out. No way in hell did I have an ace before. You definitely know when you have an ace. To this day, it's the only time that's ever happened. Maybe the white aliens like to mess with people at game bars too. I would prank another species too. I would prank anyone, so why not? Case file number 2701, written by Significant Good 5159. Bang, flash, repeat. It was a cloudy weekend in southeastern Europe, and I was on a regular bus with my girlfriend. Suddenly, a very loud bang rocked the bus, and an intense flash filled the interior. The noise reminded me of trolley buses, like the sound of their metal rods falling off or not connecting properly. This happened in the late afternoon, around 5 or 6 p.m. local time. Needless to say, we were scared crapless. The absurd part, however, was what followed. The flash only lasted for a second or two, but when it ended, the bus continued as if nothing had happened. The other passengers seemed unfazed, as if they hadn't noticed. In fact, I know they didn't, because my girlfriend and I were commenting, "What the fuck happened? Is everyone okay?" And people looked at us as if we had gone mad. It was almost like something glitched in the Matrix and we had a reality reboot. I don't think any time was lost, we were too dumbfounded to check though, but the rest of the ride was normal. This occurred in broad daylight, and both of us were sober, without any drugs or other intoxicants. We weren't tired, dehydrated, or suffering from any other disorder one might consider. We do not have epilepsy or anything similar. It was literally a case for the X-Files, I guess. There's one other story I remember. People were at home, I think it was a family, it's been so long, years, but there was like a flashbang grenade that exploded. Of course, there was no flashbang, but the appearance, the sound, the flash was all there, and this family had no idea what the source was. So is this reality glitching in a different way? Like you have the sun blipping out, all of reality blipping out for a couple seconds, or a second. Maybe there's an overload? A failure to render, and then just an overload. Case file number 2702. Condition to confuse. I don't live in the best environment. There's a pretty bad mice problem, and I've been struggling to deal with them. Today, I carefully cleaned my shelf that had all my books and old birthday cards in it. There was a lot of droppings. Needless to say, it smelled pretty awful. While cleaning the shelf, I was looking through the old cards, and out of nowhere, I got the whiff of something. It smelled almost fruity, yet like cologne, but I couldn't place where it was coming from. Whatever, right? So I finished cleaning everything and went into the bathroom to wash my hands real quick with the first available soap, which was a conditioner for the shower, because I was out of hand soap for the moment. Not the most sanitary, I know, but I got some hand soap after. And lo and behold, it was the exact same smell. So I went back to the cards and I couldn't find the smell again. Pretty weird occurrence. For context, I don't use that conditioner. I have my own, and no one was around when I smelled it. Case file number 2703, written by Remarkable Paint 7242. One paw in this world, one paw in the next. This is happening to our very old dog. She is 16, and at this point, we're pretty sure she's losing her sight and her hearing. We were actually sure her end was last year in May, but instead of scheduling her end, we figured we would just make a vet appointment for advice. The vet said she still has a good year left. Side note, she is still alive. Just so you know our situation, we sold our main house to our oldest daughter with her family, and we moved into a mother-in-law wing. It's a simple and fairly small, 1 bedroom, 1 full bath, and 1 half bath, a living room and a kitchen. She is old and has about 3 spots she favors, and sometimes she's just gone. The first time it happened, I freaked out and was sure that I would find her in the yard, dead. I looked all over our house, went outside, looked under the deck, walked every inch of the fenced backyard, and no dog. I didn't think it could be possible, but I thought I'd check anyway, and went into my daughter's house and looked there. No dog. I texted my husband, he works nights, and told him that I couldn't find her anywhere, and that I assumed she died somewhere, and when he got home we had to find her. I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, she was lying under the coffee table? Like what? A couple weeks later, my husband was getting ready to leave for work, and he always tells the dog, bye, and couldn't find her. A couple hours later, she was lying in her bed, which she has to go by to leave the house. This has been going on for about 6 months now. Everyone in our family, including my granddaughter, my daughters, and my son-in-law, we all experience it. At first, it was maybe every 2 to 3 weeks. Now it's about once a week. I know what it sounds like, but like we all know now. What we see isn't all there is. We all joke about it and say, she's probably checking out the other side here and there. But it low-key freaks me out. So when she is gone, we know we just have to leave the apartment for a couple of minutes, and when we come back, she will be there, and she always is. So strange. You know, I unironically like the idea of her just checking out the other side, whatever it may be. Case file number 2704, written by Nashap, The Green Mile Marker. Approximately 3 to 4 years ago, I was working as a subcontracted installation technician for DirecTV. For those familiar with this line of work, you understand the routine. Some days are simply awful, requiring you to be out from dawn until early midnight. On one particularly challenging day, I was training a rookie. Our route took us all around the mountains of northeast Georgia, and we didn't finish until around 8:30 or 9 p.m. As we were driving home, a green light in the sky shot towards us, its path following the road. This light was so intensely bright that the entire road, from shoulder to shoulder, and the trees on each side, were bathed in green light. All the cars on the road slowed to a stop, and we could see the other people leaning out of their windows, staring upwards. I asked my partner, "You saw that, right?" He responded, "Yep." "Okay, good," I replied. He spent the rest of the night researching meteorological and astronomical news, but found nothing. A few days later, I went on an ice cream run for my wife. As I was heading back home, I saw the same light, further off in the distance, travel in an arc over the horizon within what seemed like only 10 seconds. I've never been able to find any news articles or anything else related to those incidents. It was very unnerving. Yeah, green lights are often reported with alien sightings, or at least UFOs. We don't know if they're aliens. My guess is they are, but it could always be just government experiments. I mean, they say that government or military technology is decades ahead of what the civilian population has access to, so who knows. Case file number 2705, written by A Ghost 0800. What happens in Vegas? I was in Las Vegas, Nevada. I don't want to say which casino I was in, and there's a reason for that. This is the second time I've experienced a glitch with this particular dealer. If he somehow possesses an unusual power, I don't want him to know I've noticed. I was holding Jack and Queen. The flop came, 10-10-9. Since I had an open-ended straight draw, I was hopeful to improve my hand. The turn card came, was a 7. Great! We both checked, and the river was a 9. At this point, I believed I had 2 pairs with the queen high kicker. The dealer tabled pocket aces for aces and 10s. I tabled my hand, saying, "I got nothing, I missed," and flashed my jack and queen. Without missing a beat, one of the players exclaimed, "You have a straight!" I was certain I'd missed, as I'd been watching the cards. I glanced back at the board, and the river was, in fact, an 8. I enjoy poker, and I know what I saw. The card changed. Nobody else seemed to realize it. I had double-checked the hand before my action and confirmed my belief on the river. I had missed. It changed, not while I was looking at it, but when I looked back, it had literally changed. Do you think there are people out there with some kind of power? Is it just a coincidence? I was not drunk or high. The first time I noticed the same dealer's glitch was in a tournament when 2 players were all in. A player made a straight, and everyone saw it and commented on it. But by the river, one of the player's whole cards had shifted a value down, destroying the straight. This seems to happen when people's eyes move away from the cards in question. Even the dealer initially thought the player had made a straight before double-checking. That time, I had been influenced by alcohol or marijuana, so I chalked it up to just being high and not seeing the card right. But this time, I was completely sober. I did not win the tournament. However, I did win an unnatural amount of hands in the 30 minutes this dealer was at the table. Well, I don't know if it's the dealer doing it, or maybe he's subconsciously guiding the error. As we know, when reality is not being observed, it isn't being rendered, or at least it doesn't have to be. So maybe sometimes it is. There are still processes involved that have to happen, but they don't have to render the whole simulation. We know if no one is observing some kind of biological matter out in the wilderness, it'll still degrade. Bacteria will consume it. So there's still processes happening even if no one is directly observing it. Probably more at a muted, limited level, only the things that have to happen, not the whole visual gamut. So given that, maybe there's errors in when this subdued processing happens, and that's when you can have effects like this. Case file number 2706, written by Mixmaster Floppy. When the house takes sides. My significant other and I lived together in an older house for a few years. It was a nice place for the price. We weren't in the best place in our relationship, so we fought a couple times a week, but nothing like screaming matches. Over the first couple of months, we started to notice some odd things. The bedroom was constantly cold and depressing, which I attributed to being at a rough patch in the relationship. However, I couldn't really explain the cold since we didn't have central AC, and would hit over 100 degrees in the summer, with the rest of the house being a sauna. The animals stopped going in there, and we both stopped sleeping in there. Some of the things we use daily, keys, wallets, etc., would end up in odd places, like on dressers or in the closet. The TV would turn on in my room when nobody was there, and doors would close, not slam, but like a draft. She had mentioned that her glasses of water wouldn't be where she left them. She had a bit of a compulsion that she couldn't drink out of a cup after she put it down, so she would end up with 15 cups or glasses around the house. Well, on the night that it happened, we were getting into a pretty bad fight, and it was turning into a screaming match. The dog started barking, and we turned to tell him to be quiet. Except, he wasn't barking at us, he was barking down the hallway towards the bedroom. He backed up towards us, barking. The cat came running out of the second bedroom and into the pantry. I grabbed a bat near the door and told her to grab a knife and get ready to run out of the door. The glass that was on top of the TV whipped across the room and broke on the wall. I grabbed the dog, she grabbed the cat, and we spent the next few days at my mom's. When we went back, everything looked the same, except the bedroom door was closed. We took our stuff out of that room, put it in the spare bedroom, and understood that was no longer a room we were going to go into. Fair enough, and the thing that's funny is, the idea of having free AC in a room that is just always cool even when it's boiling hot outside is extremely appealing. But I think it's not that the room is cold. Like if you took a thermometer, it would show a normal temperature. I think the spirit is siphoning energy from you directly. And I guess it's coming out as thermal energy. In that process, you feel depressed because it's almost like a Dementor in Harry Potter. Not to that extreme, but a similar wavelength. Case file number 2707, written by Yam Collector. A clean break from reality. I was up super early in the morning for a meeting. It was the middle of winter, brutally cold, and the shower felt amazing because it was a perfect temperature. I washed my body with my bar of soap, then leaned against the shower wall for maybe 10 minutes while the water rinsed the soap off. I was still so sleepy that I was deeply relaxed by the warm water, and I almost dozed off, but I was obviously not completely asleep because I was standing. Then I suddenly realized the bar of soap that I was literally holding was simply gone, vanished right out of my hand. No one has been able to offer a satisfactory explanation as to what happened to it. People say, well, you dropped it, and it landed in such a way that it shot out of the tub and under the furniture. But that can't be because my bathtub is metal, and it was a relatively new bar. It would have made a very loud clang in that tiny bathroom. But even if I somehow didn't hear it, it's still a bathroom. There's nothing in it but a toilet, a sink, and the tub and shower combo I was in. What furniture did it go under? The bathroom door was closed, and the toilet lid was down. Both drains, the shower and the sink, are too narrow to fit a bar of soap, and also, they have crossbars in them to catch dropped items. Other people say, okay, well, if you didn't drop it, then you fell asleep standing up and the water melted it. But that can't be what happened to it either, because again, it's an almost full bar of soap. Dissolving that would take hours, and I didn't have hours, I had a meeting, and I made it to the meeting on time. Other people say, well, then you simply hallucinated the soap, and you never washed with it at all. But again, I never found the soap, so even if I suffered a 30-minute long hallucinatory episode, despite not doing drugs, drinking, or taking any medication, and I never picked it up, then it still had to disappear from the soap tray. I couldn't have just imagined it was in my hand when it was really still in the soap tray, because it stayed gone forever. I had to open a new bar. I truly believe that it clipped through the map of reality, and is now floating somewhere outside time and space. Yeah, it could be, or just in a different universe where another you has two soaps. Reality is so weird. Case file number 2708, written by Rosalind the Rogue. The Birthday Song from Beyond. I was having a rough day, and my thoughts kept turning to the past. The phone started ringing, and my mom and I looked over at the caller ID. It was the number my grandma and grandpa used to use before my grandpa died and she moved out, a number no longer in service. We were too stunned to answer, and just stared at the phone until it started saying we had a message. The message was from several years ago that we had saved for my grandma singing, "Happy Birthday." It was really weird, but I have to wonder if my grandpa knew I was having a bad day and wanted to cheer me up. I would have been happier if it was his voice, but we don't have any recordings of his voice. When I lived in Las Cruces, New Mexico, my mom and I were always hearing whistling and footsteps throughout the house. Sometimes electronics would turn on and off, buttons on toys would be pressed, or a robotic toy dog with motion sensors would bark when no one seemed to be moving around. In particular, a toy carousel would have its buttons pressed to play music or make the horses whiny. The night before we moved away, I had a friend over, and we were just settling into our sleeping bags in the back room when we heard the whistling start up between us. It started off fairly quiet and became louder and louder. There was enough light in the room to see each other and know it wasn't either of us. We later found out that a man named Robert Garcia had committed an ending on the property before we moved there. I have only seen it a couple of times, and I could just be as loony as a tune, but I've seen a strange humanoid in my current home. It looks like a pale human with lots of burns, but the most shocking feature to me is that there's nothing from about the waist down except torn flesh and stuff. The first time I saw it was when I was leaving the bathroom. It was dragging itself down the hallway into my room. I followed it in, but couldn't find it anywhere. I dismissed it as my eyes playing tricks on me or something, though I'd seen it quite clearly. The second time was a while later when I fell asleep in my room with my TV on and woke up to the feeling of being watched. It was holding itself up on the edge of the bed and was just staring at me. The funny thing is, I didn't feel scared. I was mostly just confused and stared back for a bit before I fell back to sleep or something. It could have been a hallucination or a dream, I don't know. Even though I wasn't scared at the time, it's somewhat disturbing to think that I didn't even try to get away or anything. Yeah, your mind was still processing what the hell was going on, and it's almost so unbelievable that your mind doesn't panic. You don't enter fight or flight, you're just like, you enter confusion, WTF. Case file number 2709, written by White Mist. Therapists don't work the graveyard shift. I work as an overnight nurse in a hospital. Our unit has a rehab gym with 2 doors, one connecting directly to the unit, leading to a small middle area, and another door that provides direct access to the gym. This setup allows patients to move around freely, preventing them from feeling confined. They can wander as they please within reason, without getting stuck or locked in or out of places. I've worked here for 6 years. About 6 months ago, around 11 or 12 a.m., I was in a patient's room when a fellow nurse casually asked me why there were still therapists in the hospital at midnight. I looked at her blankly, thinking she was joking. She told me she heard the passcode on the door going off, as if someone was literally typing it in to enter. It then occurred to me that I had heard it too, but I hadn't registered because I was so focused on administering medications. She then asked who she saw. As she apparently hadn't just heard it, she saw someone in a tiny window between the gym and our unit as well. I calmly went down to the doors and looked around. All patients were asleep and accounted for. Upon opening the doors, I verified they were indeed locked. However, I swore I saw a tallish shape in the rehab gym itself out of the corner of my eye, which vanished as I turned the lights on. I can't quite recall if it was my mind playing tricks on me or if I indeed saw something. We spent an inordinate amount of time looking around because nothing like that had ever happened on my watch, although others had claimed to see things. Her paranoia about it projected onto me too. Ever since then, I keep my ears open for the alarm door and for odd shadows I never really paid attention to while working the graveyard shift. The thing is, I've never really believed in that stuff and used to mock anyone who brought it up. Now, I'm not too sure. Oh, and that nurse? She hasn't worked on my unit since. Lucky butt. Case file number 2710, written by The Odd Whale Out, haunted by Huggies. I'm going to admit right off the bat that I have been a little stressed, but not much more than normal. I got out of the Navy in 2023, and since then have had 4 deaths in the family, including my mother-in-law-to-be, my sister-in-law's wedding, my wedding, 2 cross-country moves, a house renovation and sale, and a honeymoon baby. My husband is still in the military, so he got orders across the country, which was a second move. The house we were supposed to rent turned out to be technically legal, but definitely unsafe, and we had to get out of our lease. It was missing entire windows with winter coming, had exposed wiring, and was very unsanitary. I didn't feel safe staying there while pregnant. Our stuff was already packed in the moving truck and on the way, so we redirected it to storage, and I moved in with my parents while we shifted gears to buying a house instead of renting. They lived in state, but 4.5 hours away from the base. My husband couch surfed with a coworker at this time. Then my parents left for an Australian cruise they'd been planning for a few years. So I house and dog sat for them while they were gone, because what else could I really do? My brother still lives at home, which is really fortunate because I suddenly had eclamptic seizures and delivered at 28 weeks. Military medical missed my pre-eclampsia, and I had to get a medevac. My son was born at 2 pounds 3.6 ounces. He's happy and healthy now, don't worry. 3 months later, we closed on a nice little house and our son came home from the NICU. My parents helped us set up the house and settle in. My husband went back to work and my parents went home. So here's where things get weird. I hear phantom crying all the time. It's distant and vague. I ignore it because I'm sleep deprived and it's my first baby. I figure it's one of those many mental and physical changes people forget to tell you about when you have a baby. The baby monitor motion detector goes off when nothing is in the room. It has a camera, and the screen shows nothing has changed. Maybe the curtains moved? I don't know. Have bigger fish to fry. The baby monitor starts reporting crying when the baby is asleep in my arms downstairs. I check the settings to make sure the microphone isn't too sensitive, and it's not picking up a lawnmower or something. The baby monitor starts crying on its own. I hear the crying through the microphone. It sounds just like my son when he's gassy. When I check the screen, he's dead asleep or he's in the room with me. It's a Wi-Fi monitor, so I changed our password in case somehow our neighbors had a baby without me knowing, and they've hooked up their baby monitor to our Wi-Fi by mistake, resulting in some kind of interference. I have been dealing with a lovely mental health cocktail of general anxiety and depression of a 20-something-year-old postpartum military-related PTSD, some kind of neurodivergence and new mother jitters, amplified by the NICU experience. During this time, the baby was still eating every 2 or 3 hours, and he had an NG tube, so I just chalked it up to the very rational explanation that I was just crazy now. The baby is healthy, but I don't think I can take on ghosts or phantom babies until the next financial quarter. So I scheduled an appointment with a psychiatrist and went about my life. The other day, my husband came home early, and my baby and I were trying to start a garden in the backyard. My husband came out and asked why I was leaving the baby upstairs alone and crying. But then he looked over and saw the baby right next to me. He's really confused because he definitely hears crying from upstairs and from the baby monitor. I'm like, "Oh, you hear it too. I just assumed I was nuts." He went out and bought a new fancy monitor, twice. We still get interdimensional baby crying. It stops if I stick my head in the nursery and says something like, "You okay, sweetheart? Mama loves you." It's weird, but it's happening less frequently. Yeah, that's all very weird, but makes me think about having a family, having kids, having a baby. I think raising someone to be a good, decent person it's doable, but it's that first 2 or 3 years where the baby is so dependent and the lack of sleep would just kill me. If I don't get good sleep, I get migraines and I don't know how people do it, even if they don't get migraines. It's crazy. Now time for the jokes of the day. My wife and I were cuddling last night when she said, "Show me a good time." So I stepped outside and ran an 11-second 100-meter sprint. Nice. a truck full of Vicks Vapor Rub crashed in the middle of the highway during rush hour. Amazingly, no congestion at all. Every day, I tell my wife I'm going jogging, then don't do it. It's a running joke. My uncle retired this week after being a lumberjack for 40 years. At his retirement party, he said he knew that in his career, he cut down exactly 27,419 trees. I asked him how he knew, and he said, "Every time I cut down a tree, I keep a log." Sadly, the inventor of the throat lozenge has died. There will be no coffin at his funeral. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.